Welcome to the latest Motley Fool scoreboard. I'm on Chalk Balloon. We've got longtime fools, Dan Caplinger and Rick Munarriz, giving a 1 to 10 rating to a top 200 stock in the primary Hidden Gems database. It's DocuSign, ticker symbol DOCU. With the strength of DocuSign's business, including factors like industry and competition, 10's invincible, 1 is hopeless, Dan's at a 6, Rick, you're at a 7.
Yeah, everybody knows the story about the rise of DocuSign. E-signatures were already growing popularity heading into the COVID-19 crisis, but the pandemic made it essential. DocuSign's growth exploded. A story that isn't often told as well is about the fall of DocuSign, because holy Mandela effect, man, it never really happened. Sure, like many early pandemic beneficiaries, DocuSign has an ugly stock chart since peaking in 2021. It's down 85% from that all-time high. But DocuSign keeps growing, slower than before, but growing all the same. DocuSign is now an e-signature and a more complete contract lifecycle management platform. That's CLM, as in stay CLM and carry on. I went with a 7.
Yeah, I went with 6 because to me, I might be one of those people that's kind of has the misimpression about DocuSign because, to me, it kind of is what it is. It was a great tool for getting electronic signatures, still is. The question, I haven't seen in my own personal life, in my own business life, that more complete contract lifecycle management kind of play out. I don't see a whole lot of vendors obviously using DocuSign products for that entire process. It's good they found a way to make money. It's good that they've managed to find ways to keep growing, because there's plenty of pandemic-era businesses that kind of went away entirely once the pandemic was done. But I do think that you are getting some threats from competitors. Those are real. Those are things you're going to need to pay attention to with DocuSign going forward.
For management, a 10 is Warren Buffett, a 1 is Homer Simpson. Dan's at an 8. Rick, you're at a 7.
Yeah, so CEO Alan Thygesen wasn't one of the 3 founders that started DocuSign in 2003. He wasn't the CEO that took it public back in 2018. He didn't even see it through the COVID-19 boom in 2020, 2021. He came over as a top Google ad executive in late 2022 after DocuSign was struggling in the post-pandemic era and the boardroom wanted to shake things up. He's still done something impressive. Revenue has risen between 7% and 9% for 11 consecutive quarters. He has literally returned stability and for the last 3 years, profitability to DocuSign. He's the middle reliever and potential closer that DocuSign needed to clean up the pandemic hangover era. I went with a 7.
Yeah, I went with an 8 because to me, it's more like the starter got kicked out in the 3rd inning and somebody needed to come and clean things up. I think that not only is what Thygesen's done, is it impressive, it's probably the most impressive thing, because we saw so many businesses that do really well early in the pandemic. They had a whole bunch of potential. But then when that obvious source of fuel ran out, they just came all plunging back to earth. But Thygesen found a way to keep DocuSign afloat and moving forward, albeit more slowly. But to me, that's what that achievement, it kind of surpasses in many ways the initial achievement of building the business from scratch. That's why I went with the 8.
Right, high praise. For financials, a 10 is a fortress, a 1 is yikes. Dan's at a 7, Rick, you're at an 8.
Yeah, so high single-digit revenue growth isn't the Autobahn DocuSign was in 2020 and 2021 when it was growing its business north of 45% in back-to-back years. It might still be more your speed this way. DocuSign sees revenue growth of 9% again this fiscal year. Earnings and free cash flow have been growing even faster. I went with an 8.
I think I agree with the argument. The reason I went just with the 7 is that I think when you compare DocuSign to what companies that are kind of in its peer group now, the small to mid-sized companies that are trying to capture tech trends today, that level of growth doesn't fit well. It doesn't compare quite as well to what you're seeing elsewhere in the market. I am impressed with the solid performance that DocuSign has managed to produce. I just think that, given what you can get elsewhere, a 7 is more my speed as far as what that score should be.
All right, Dan, let's talk valuation. How well will DocuSign stock do over the next 5 years? How safe is it? 10's a sure thing, 1's a lottery ticket.
I went with 5 to 10% on 5-year return average, safety score of 5. And I think that you kind of have this binary outcome situation right now. If the company manages to stay on the course that it's on now and grow more fully beyond just e-signatures into the whole document management process, then at some point investors are going to say, hey, this company's for real. We're going to give it an expanded earnings multiple, and you would see much higher stock performance. On the other hand, I think there is risk of disruption, either from competitors, existing competitors, or from new companies. The playing field right now is pretty complex. It's hard to predict exactly what direction innovation is going to go. You have all sorts of AI capabilities. You're not quite sure what they're going to look like from an execution standpoint. There's a possibility out there that DocuSign's entire business strategy becomes obsolescent at some point in the not too distant future. That's why I'm giving it the low safety score, but I do think that it has a chance to generate reasonable returns.
Yeah, so with $1 billion in cash and investment on its balance sheet and no long-term debt beyond its long-term lease obligations, it's been able to buy back its historically cheap stock. The stock is cheap. It's trading for just 10 times this fiscal year's adjusted earnings and less than 9 times next year's target. The multiples are a little more than double that on a reported basis, but it's still reasonable. I can see DocuSign beating the market with a 10 to 15% 5-year annualized return. I went with a 6 for safety. The balance sheet is strong. The financials are solid. I just have longer-term concerns about the moat for any digital signatures platform.
Thank you to both Rick and to Dan. They've given DocuSign an all-right overall score of 6.7 out of 10, with both Rick and Dan preferring Adobe because it's growing faster, it's cheaper, and it's more diversified. Look out for a new scoreboard every market day at 7 p.m. Eastern. Next up is Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Till then, Fool on.